This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
Well, once again, we actually took the elevator, but the guy that occupies the fourth floor of the Arundel Center, rumor has it, is that he takes the steps. Is there any truth to that?
It's absolutely true. And the good news is that when I first came in, I remember being a little winded when I got to the top. I wasn't getting much exercise during the campaign. You know, I quit my job working on the farm that kept me fit.
Right.
And then, you know, driving around in cars doesn't help.
This doesn't jive with the whole replacing the boots and wearing out the boots if you're not getting any exercise on the campaign.
Well, during the campaign, I was like, you know, going like I wasn't in my I wasn't in my in my I called it my hunky chunk man suit, my coveralls and all of that, and my you know what kickers with the duct tape on the boot. But no, I always go up the stairs. It's 4 stories. You can take an elevator. And I don't get a lot of exercise. I try to get exercise wherever I can. I now have an antique rowing machine in my office with a bicycle chain and a little seat you sit on and you slide back and forth and row. And I actually do that. But yeah, I go up all the time, and I'm not as winded now as I was when I started.
Well done. Well, for those that haven't figured it out quite yet, we're up here on the 4th floor of the Arundel Center, and we're speaking with County Executive Steuart Pittman. He may not need an introduction, but for those that have been living under a rock for the last 6.5 to 7 years, Steuart Pittman is our county executive. He was elected in 2018, wasn't it?
Yep.
Reelected in 2022. Been here forever in the county. And you've got a background in community organizing, farming, land conservation, and really your administration is focused on education, public safety, economic development, and environmental sustainability. And I want to thank you very much for inviting me up this morning to talk about it.
Thanks, John.
And I do want to give a quick plug.
I think I invited myself because we did this. We've done this a couple times early on.
We have.
And it had been a while, and I missed you so much.
You know, but this is not the type of place that I can just walk in and say, hey, I'm going up to the 4th floor.
True.
First of all, you don't accept the digital IDs to get into the building, which is, I think, is a flaw. We need to work on that.
Digital IDs. Well, for staff, we have them.
No, the state issued digital IDs.
Oh, the
that you
state
can have
ones.
I can get on a plane and TSA takes them.
Really?
But not the security guard at the Arundel Center.
Interesting. Okay, we'll have to look into that.
But I want to give a quick plug for the listeners and for you, because I noticed a sign. Actually, I listen to it all the time, but I noticed signs all over the Arundel Center. But for Pittman and Friends podcast, and that's a podcast that you do, and the folks that are listening to this obviously know about podcasts. So go subscribe that if you've got any kind of idea for any kind of just civic information, I would say. It's really great. I mean, you've had some great guests. You've got some wonderful people that work for the county. You've got some people that are county adjacent. You've got some people that, I haven't heard the one with the
governor,
with Fort Meade.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. We got the superintendent over there, Colonel Gore, and then we got the superintendent of schools a couple days later, which is coming out, and then we also got the governor all in the same week. So, but they're every Tuesday.
Well, again, Pittman and Friends is where you want to look for wherever you get your podcast and subscribe to that. Give that a listen. There are really some really good stuff there. Speaking of that, Pittman and Friends, I was listening to the most recent one I guess I listened to was with Julie Hummer from the county council. Mm-hmm. And one thing that sort of struck out with me in that conversation is that you said that through your terms, you've had 2 really decent councils where you've been able to work bipartisanly, get things done. You weren't stonewalled or anything like that. Right. And in your first term, you had a Republican council. And your second term, you had a Democratic council.
No. There was a Republican council before I came in. It was 4-3 Republican. It flipped to 4-3 Democrat. In my 2018 election, and it stayed. So it was 4-3 both times.
Okay.
But it's exactly like my family. There are 7 siblings. And in fact, by genders also the same. We had 2 boys and 5 girls, and that's been how the council's been a lot of the time. And then, but we also have the 4-3 because it's 2 litters of children. So we had my dad's first marriage where he had 4 kids, and the second marriage that I'm part of, he had 3 kids. So it's very similar.
Okay, how did they vote? Did they vote 4-3 too?
It depends on what we're voting on.
You know, what's interesting though is that this council's gotten a lot done, and you have found a way to really cross that divide, to reach across the aisle, to work with the Republicans, to work with all the different constituents that you've got there. And I guess my question is do you think that party politics has a place at the local level?
Good question.
Or,
I might upset some people in the Democratic Party that I'm part of by saying this, but I don't think I actually will. People really don't identify, most voters don't identify with a party. They don't. They care about issues. They either, they don't like government or they do like government. Parties have changed a lot in what they stand for over the years. I mean, I actually read a history of the Republican Party written by a woman named Heather Cox Richardson that goes way back through history. And it's really fascinating how, the Republican Party was the progressive one for a long, and the Democratic Party were, trying to keep things the way they were, and it's changes a lot. So I thought about running as an independent, actually. Although some people call me a progressive Democrat, and in some ways I am, in some ways maybe I'm not, but I don't know. I just hate the boxes. I don't.
I agree with you because I think I am I don't know whether it's a secret or not, but I'm a registered Republican because you had to sort of pick a party.
I knew that, and I still agreed to talk to you.
If you want, I think I had a sign here. So, but I mean, the only reason I did that was because you sort of had to if you wanted to participate in the primaries. And I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. You had to pick an R or a D and do it. I can't remember. Since my very first election, probably back in 1980, I have never pulled that R lever, flipped all the R's and pulled the lever.
Started doing them all, yeah.
Nor have I done the D's.
Right.
I turn around and I vote for the person that I think is going to do best. And I was talking to the League of Women Voters who had a great analogy for this. Says, elections are like mass transit. You're sitting on the corner, you're waiting for the bus to come. Get on the bus that's going to take you as close to where you're going as you can. Mm-hmm. Knowing that it's not going to get you there. Yeah. Okay, so if we're here at the Arundel Center, we're going to get on the bus. It's going to take us out to West Street, and it's going to take us to Parole.
At least in Anne Arundel County, it's not going to get you all the way there. Maybe in New York City.
And then at that point, then you reassess and you figure out and figure what bus is going to get me to a little bit further, a little bit further, which I thought was a really good analogy. Yep. And then sometimes you vote for somebody and the bus goes completely wrong direction. You're wondering how that happened. I won't talk about any current things, but I don't know. There's such a thing as buyer's remorse. Any lemon laws on the federal level? And another thing too is you just recently did a podcast with Leadership Anne Arundel. It hasn't been released yet. It may be released depending on when this goes out. Mm-hmm. But I would recommend give that a listen. There's some great stuff there from Leadership Anne Arundel. And
I'm hoping to do one with them on our podcast too, because I think it's so important what they do to sort of connect up and coming folks who are leaders in the community and government and in the private sector with each other and with what's going on in this county.
It was a great program. I was toying with the idea for years and I sort of pestered for years to do it. And during the tail end, the second year of COVID was when I went through the class. Mm-hmm. And it was just fantastic. You think, and I would even say as county executive, you think all you know about the county. I guarantee you go through the program and you don't.
I don't know. Yeah.
I knew an awful lot. But it was like, wow, okay. So we've, which is really a fascinating dig into the county. So I do recommend anybody do that. But in that podcast that you had mentioned that your bucket list for your final 2 years is really the affordable housing. How would you like to see that done? As I look here, I live in Annapolis. It's just ungodly expensive to do between property values and taxes and everything else. And we need to do something. I know at one point I had heard, and I don't know whether this is a legitimate figure, that 75% of our fire department lived outside of the county.
Yep.
And that probably is still true. And a good portion of them lived in Pennsylvania because they had to shift work and they were able to, come down for 3 days.
Yeah.
How do we solve this?
So, yes, affordable housing is a big thing that has been really hard to even make a dent in. We've made some real progress in legislation. We've created the Affordable Housing Trust Fund with a dedicated revenue source. We've made, and I think we've moved the electorate, the public, and on all these issues, it's really, the power is with the people, in my view. I'm an old community organizer. And if you don't bring people on board for what's being done, the pendulum will swing right back in the next election. So it all gets undone. On housing, part of the reason we made some progress and we're being looked at around the state is that we've found this path where we say on land use, we're going to be greener, we're going to be more equitable, and that's the housing piece in part, and smarter, which means build stuff where there's infrastructure, build stuff and protect open space and protect nature and even protect. And some people say this is NIMBY and it's wrong, but protect the character of neighborhoods that people bought into. So it's a good thing when people love where they live. That's how they engage. That's a positive. We want everybody to feel that way. Not everybody does, but so when we do affordable housing, we have to make sure that we're not throwing out the window the environmental standards that we've created, the adequate public facilities for traffic and schools and all of those things. We have to have the infrastructure and we have to plan for it. So we've managed to engage a whole lot of people in Plan 2040 and in our region plans. We have 9 regions now, and it's really developing a core of people. The Growth Action Network is the big, association of neighborhood groups in the county. Used to be very anti-growth of any kind, don't develop anything. And now they're more smart growth. They've been a big ally on the affordable housing work that we've done, and they're a huge ally on the environmental work that we've done. So that's key. You gotta bring people on. Now the stuff that actually will make an impact, the moderately priced dwelling unit thing, the 15% of new development being affordable. It's still even not that affordable. It's affordable for teachers now, affordable for firefighters and police officers, not affordable for people in the service sector.
But they're not having vacation homes in Hawaii either.
Right. Well, and the one thing that I'm really insistent. So we have to do more than that. We've got to do some places where the market just won't build it. There's a limited amount of government subsidy, and there will probably be even less in the future.
Sure.
So the low income housing tax credits and things, it's competitive and it's really hard to get. And so that can't fill the gap. I believe we got to build smaller. We got to build. People have to get used to the idea. Like we used to live in smaller houses. Now everybody thinks they need to have a lot more space in their home. And if we build good stuff that's smaller, people start to move towards that. But even where we do that in this county, like the apartments on River Road, 500 units in one place. We thought with that kind of density, we'd get affordability. No, we're not getting affordability. There's this unlimited supply of wealthy people who are highly mobile, who want to live close to the Chesapeake Bay. And we keep building really expensive stuff and folks will buy it. And we forget about the essential workers, who sustain our
the
economy.
people that need to come to your house when it catches on fire,
Sure.
the people that, when there's a problem and the police need to come to your door.
So there are tools, but it's got to be the market. I mean, here's the conservative side of me. I do believe that the market is a very effective tool and the government can't do all these things. We have to get the market building smaller, the market building so that you don't need a subsidy, but it becomes affordable.
Another part of that podcast that really hit me, and I just, it really sort of highlighted your caring and your compassion. And you were talking about when you got elected, there was a day or two after, whatever it was, that you spent the time driving all over the county. And I was listening to that as it was recording. And I was like, wow, okay, here's a guy that's not, hey, when's the party? We're going to do this and we're going to spend money and we're going to do this and electric everything. I mean, this was like a come to Jesus kind of a moment saying, okay, well, and when you said that it hit you that this is somewhat all your responsibility in a couple of weeks.
That was the feeling was that it was hard to wake up in the morning and every morning I wake up, it's like, I'm the county executive. What does that mean? And look around at all the places in this county and realize that, I said that I was going to manage growth and protect open space and make sure that our, address traffic concerns, one of the other really hard things to do. And it's kind of like a big old weight on the shoulders. And I'm not complaining. It's what I asked for. It's what I wanted. And I'm glad I've done it and I'm in the job still for another little less than 2 years, but I'm also very comfortable with being term limited and knowing when the end date is, and then somebody else will have that on their shoulders. And then I can go and maybe be an advocate on the outside and take what I've learned and try to use it.
Well, you've been an advocate for people. And I know when you first, were elected at your inaugural address, you changed the logo or the slogan of the county from, went a couple different ways.
It was really funny because Steve Shue was at the inauguration and, we get along. I've actually had beer with him in the last year and I like him. But I turned back to him when I said that we were changing the slogan from the best place to live, work, and start a business, which was the slogan that he used. And I said, we're going to be more conservative with our slogan.
Right.
He was more conservative, and just call it the best place. And then I said, the best place to live, the best place to be a tree, the best place to whatever. And then we added on for all after the hate bias incident report came out from the Maryland State Police that said that we had more incidents than any other county. And I stole those words from the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, borrowed.
Right.
And for all. So liberty and justice.
I know on day one, you've been an advocate for people, whether they've been documented, undocumented, or everything else. I know on day one, you signed an executive order rescinding Steve Shue's cooperation with ICE. And that was the 287G.
We still cooperate,
program.
But we don't
offer
do their
facilities
work for them for free. Right. Yeah.
and to let it do. And recently, the county joined the certified welcoming designation, and kind of surprised me. But at the press conference, you had an undocumented neighbor that came up, and she said, rightfully so, that I am every bit as much a member of this community in this county as anybody else is, and I've given more, the whole 9 yards, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But you alluded to things may be changing, and you look at what's happening maybe 20 miles to our west here, and was that a risk? We don't know what the new administration is capable of, is legally allowed to do, what kind of crazy ideas they will have. There's been talks about how
it was a risk.
Yeah.
We had already planned to do this before the election. Our staff had looked at that program. It's similar to AARP has a friendly to seniors by having crosswalks and parks that are accessible and things that are make it good for a senior to live in a jurisdiction, and they evaluate you over a period of time and you try to get the certification. Well, this is a similar thing, but it's for folks who've moved in from other countries who might have this is not their first language, immigrants, welcoming of immigrants, and so. We decided we wanted to be evaluated because we were trying to do a better job at that and integrate folks into our workforce, integrate folks into our school system, integrate their kids into our school system, all these things. And so question was, do we not do it because Trump got elected and is saying that he wants to deport, millions and millions of people? And we decided to go ahead and do it, partly because it was a way to separate the work that local government does for all people and to build community with everybody who lives here, from, what the feds do, which is immigration enforcement, which is totally separate. So the funny thing is, we did the press con, we had the chief of police, we had all kinds of good community leaders there, caucus of African-American leaders, and it was very successful. I was a little nervous about the woman who was undocumented. I didn't know she was going to be part of it on her behalf. I just worry that she puts a target on her back. But
that was my concern here.
Yeah,
it's like, why don't you just send her address over to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Right. So, but she clearly chose to do that. She was involved with Casa Maryland, who was making a statement, and I understand the statement as you do.
It was interesting that when the immigration thing is, I thought that when Trump was elected, it might be the best time to be an ostrich, okay, and let's put our head down here under the sand, and we're going to peek up in about 18 months, 2 years, see what Congress looks like, and okay, it might be nope, go back, figure down for 4 years and figure out what it is. I am fully in agreement that with our immigrant community, if there's bad people in here, let's
absolutely
figure out, get them out. But they're so vital, to our community, and they are our neighbors, they are our community, and they deserve our support.
Yeah. I noted in an interview with Fox 45, they didn't use this part, but that there are people who slipped through the cracks of the law on immigration, like Melania Trump, like Elon Musk, worked here illegally, like our mayor, Gavin Buckley.
Yeah.
He got asylum through Ronald Reagan's program.
Right.
And that's how he was able to stay and continue to work. And so throughout our history, it's always been like that. People will overstay a visa, or they'll come here because they're trying to save the lives of themselves and their families from some gang back in the place, or the government even. So that's why we have asylum laws and rules and all of those things. And so allowing for that, and it's not a crime to be undocumented. It's a civil offense, but it's not a crime.
Right.
So when they call them criminals, I don't know what their definition of a criminal is, but it's not under the definition. So I do want to remind people that it is possible to be undocumented in this county and to have a job and to be paying taxes, even though you don't get the benefits of those taxes. You don't get the Social Security, but you pay in. And they all want to be documented. So let's change the laws to make it so that they can be documented.
Thank you. I said this. I mean, my ignorance came to light probably 8 years ago. I was at the 4th of July naturalization ceremony at the Bake House, which is hands down my favorite event of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, every 4th of July, 9 a.m., I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I'm sitting there watching this, and I thought, okay, this would be kind of cool. I think they had the director of ICE or maybe a secretary sign or, administering the oath. And I'm listening to, Dr. blah, 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 whatever it may be, from whatever Pakistan or from India or from wherever it is, has worked. This is what he's done. He's worked for Hopkins for 20 years and this. And I'm going, how does somebody come in here and exist for 20, 30 years, get married, have a family, have the whole career, and not be a citizen? And it dawned on me, and I learned, I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's such a moving event to do that. But I mean, when you look at what the immigrant community does contribute, okay? I mean, the low-hanging fruit is say, okay, yeah, they can cut our grass and they can, but I mean, restaurants, they got, tax bases, you've got, it's just, and we're a melting pot. We're a mixing bowl, one of the two.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we all have the same roots. We all came from someplace.
Yeah,
so.
And there's so many undocumented people because every time that Congress is close to passing legislation that would make them legal and do immigration reform, somebody realizes that there's political benefit in dividing people by immigration status, and they do it, and you peel off a bunch of people, and the bill doesn't pass. So
if I was living in 1600, I say, okay, here's the deal: get the bad people out. Okay, I don't think anybody has a disagreement with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are in here say, okay, fine. Here's a new expedited program in 2 years. Here's your checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Come back here within the next 2 years. Show us the checklist, and you're golden.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, come with a really, really good excuse or be prepared to leave.
Yeah.
And then let's tighten up the border. Let's we do have a problem with.
Oh yeah, we don't want people coming across the border without papers.
With drugs and everything else that comes in there. So let's just switch tacks a little bit, get off of the federal thing. But you were first out of the gate to the guy that lives over here on State Circle, in the big house on State Circle, to say Westmore is the guy. I mean, you were the very first political leader in the state to endorse him. You have been the first political leader in the county, I think, to endorse James Kitchen, who is going to be running for the office next to us in 2026.
Yeah. I was also one of the early ones on Anthony Brown, on Senator Angela also Brooks, and on a number. And I've always felt that if you're going to do it, there's some benefits to doing it early. You have to really believe.
Sure, you can get the governor for a podcast.
Well, and you have to believe that the person you're endorsing is, I almost look at it like a horse race, and whether that horse has got, the what it takes to win the race. And so it's, and then the other benefit of doing it early is that other people who jump into the race, they don't bother asking you to endorse them. So, because you're already in.
It reminds me of a friend of mine who used to love to golf, and in the early part of his marriage, he would say, "Hey, honey, I'm going to go golfing with the boys in Hilton Head. I'll be back, or in September or whatever it is." And he'd listen to, like, "Why do you have to go out with the boys all the time and golf and this and that?" And then September rolls around, I go out, I golf, and I come back and I hear it again. "Oh my God, you're gone for a week and golfing." Throughout his marriage, then he learned. He said, "Well, what I do is I just wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going and golfing for 2 weeks. For a week, I'll be back." He says, "Then I just hear it when I come back. So I've cut my yakking and nagging at me in half." So
there you go. Yeah.
endorse early, and you don't have anybody knocking on your door with their hand out there.
Yeah.
But this is very, very early for the county executive race, and I know that Kitchen is looking for public funding on this, which is something which is new to the game. But is that kind of a risk? I mean, I've heard you mentioned, Mayor Buckley here in Annapolis. I've heard that he is considering to run for office. I mean, that could be an awkward conversation looking for an endorsement, or what if Westmore
I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close to him, and I've had conversations about it, and it wasn't awkward. But there are a couple of things going on. One is that I have believed from day one, and long before I ever ran for office, that money in politics has been a negative. That whether it's at the federal level or the local level, where it gets interesting at the local level is that, and you can ask any jurisdiction, especially a growing jurisdiction in a suburban area, where the money comes from to put people in office. They'll say real estate developers. It's almost like they think it's a tax that they pay to get. And it used to be really dirty and ugly, where they would get permits because they wrote checks. I think there may be some old school developers who still think that way. They're more sophisticated now, and it is more access and openness and all those things. When I first ran, I didn't get hardly any developer money, and I think in the very beginning I led them to believe I wasn't going to take any, and I don't think I actually got any. I might have gotten a couple of affordable housing developers who heard me talk about that. And then in the second campaign, I aggressively did everything I could to raise money, because I had a challenger who ultimately raised more than I did. And she was saying she was going to be their candidate. She is an attorney, and her husband worked for developers and had good connections with them. I actually found that I'd made a mistake by not talking to them in my first term enough. Like, we're saying we want smart growth. We're saying we want good development. But if you don't talk to the people who build it, and meet with them about their projects, even sometimes if they're getting stuck in the pipeline. It's not like I'm going to change the position of the planning director. That's like telling the chief of police, how to enforce the law. You should not do that. But knowing what their goals are and what they're trying to build, and being able to help to steer them and say, well, have you thought about a little more affordable housing in this? Or have you thought about, is, I think, a constructive role. So, but I also felt that they had access to me that other folks didn't. And it was just a natural thing. It's like you're going to these fundraisers, you're hanging out and drinking cocktails with the same old people all the time, the people who really write the big checks in politics. And you certainly see it at the state level as well. You go to these lobbyists, fundraisers and all these things, and they're the people who invest in the campaigns. And so Larry Hogan got elected using public finance because he was running against the Democratic machine, and he couldn't get the big money to support him at that point. He didn't run the second time using public finance, just the first time, and he won on it. We've got some counties who are now doing this, and I thought that'd be so great for Anne Arundel if we could have that and give people the option of running with no contributions above $250. And then, because you take that big hit, you don't get the $6,000 contributions that you would get otherwise. You create a fund, and we're talking like, we put $1 million in the budget last year. We'll probably put another $1 million this year. A couple $1 million over a 4-year period is about what I think it's going to cost. And that really isn't a lot of money to make our politics cleaner, in my view. So I think it's a good investment. Right. And then as far as Kitchen, he's made a decision to run on it. I think some council members, I hope, will make a decision to run on it. And I hope other county executive candidates make a decision to run on it. But I would love to see the next county executive come into this office having used the public finance system.
I mean, I think, money corrupts.
Yeah.
To a degree. And it's interesting. I mean, I love that the new elections, both in 25 here and in the city of Annapolis, as well as 26, look to be very crowded. Which I think is a good thing, because now you're getting people that are involved. You're hearing different aspects as opposed to the same old. I mean, as you mentioned, you're happy that you're term limited. Honestly, we'd be tired of you if you didn't have a term limits there. County, as far as finances go, I mean, federal funds may be dwindling. We don't know exactly how that's going to affect us. The state has their own issues this year, and I know that Governor Moore has said that he's looking to put some of the onus back down onto the counties. How is the county prepared for that? I mean, I haven't seen Chris in a while. Does he still have hair?
Yeah, but it's all over the place. So I'm less worried about the state than I am the feds in terms of, we've looked at all the federal grants, even directly to departments, including the police department and a lot of health and human service agencies. Our capital, so there's about $34 million there. There's $160 million in our capital budget that's federal grants that are supposed to be coming. There's like $93 million in the school system, direct federal. We got teachers that are funded by federal grants. So that's a huge hit. The state, they did a briefing the night before they introduced their budget. The governor's office did for county leaders. And they were very specific about what they're putting on counties and what might change for counties. In the past, when the state has had a budget crunch, they've just said, okay, counties, now you pay for your roads. We're going to slash the the funding that we give you for that, and a lot of other areas too, health and others. And then counties have to end up picking up the slack. They knew that history. They didn't want to repeat that history. They told us $157 million is about what would be pushed onto counties. And then we've got data for Anne Arundel. So we're about a tenth of that, $15 million hit. But they also note that if the tax reform package that they put together goes through as planned, that we would end up getting some money out of that. It'd be about a wash. So that about $15 million we would get back in the way they're changing the way taxes are collected.
Okay.
That changes things for the county. So the good news for us is that at least this governor is trying not to, I'll say screw us. Yeah. Now, what the General Assembly does and how it all shakes out, yeah, I mean, we have to keep track. We have to worry and think about that. But when you compare the numbers that we're talking about from the state hurting us to what the feds are doing, it's
night and day.
Totally the feds. Yeah.
Talking about the General Assembly, and I was talking with a friend the other day, and I'm incredibly happy for Congresswoman Elfreth. I mean, she worked hard. And I mean, one thing I will give her credit for is that throughout this election that she did not have a competitor in the primary or the general as far as, I mean, yes, she did technically, but she ran
in the primary. She had a lot of competitors.
Well, she did, but I mean,
she blew them out of the water.
She was the favorite, and she was the favorite in the general as well, I think. And I think that, she raced.
She was the favorite around here. If you asked in Howard County, they didn't know her as much. They knew other.
But she ran both of those races. Like she was running against, Bill Clinton in his first, in his first term.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
she
is a go-getter, and she's done a lot of good for the county.
Yeah.
As I think about it, though, we've kind of lost in a bit. I mean, here she is in D.C. She's the freshman. We had Mike Bush here, who was, a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he brought home the bacon to the county as much as he could as Speaker of the House. And now, we've got a delegation that's really young. I mean, I think 12 out of the 16 delegates are in their first term, and I think half of the senators are in their first term. We've got a congressman. I mean, John Sarbanes was, respected. He had many years in Congress there. Is that going to be a problem for us just, in the future? Or
I don't think necessarily. I think you can have young and have talent. And you can have people that have political connections that maybe the older people wouldn't have had, because there's a lot of change going on at the state level as well, the governor's office. So no secret that, I and my team have a great relationship with the governor and his team, and that's beneficial. I mean, we may get some things that we might not have otherwise,
right.
But I'm a newbie. And in the General Assembly, we've got, younger, but we've also got a fairly new Senate president, a fairly new speaker, and the relationships can be just as strong and made quickly. And so I've got great relationships with both of them. And I know that our delegation, they look at some swing districts, and they want to keep those districts, particularly in the Senate. And in keeping those districts, they want to deliver for those districts. So, and we're talking about, District 30,
sure.
and Don Giles' seat that she took, was a Republican seat before.
Right.
So they want to keep those, and that means that we have strength. So there's a lot of factors. I'm not too worried.
Resilience Authority. That's a sort of a joint venture between the city and the county.
Mm-hmm.
And the capstone project, for lack of a better word, is the city dock resiliency build up and everything else. With all that's going on in D.C., I mean, I know that there's 33, 34, depending on who you talk to, $1 million that's in a FEMA grant. Do you know it's a huge chunk of it? Do you know what the status is of that right now?
I know less than, I mean, I don't know any more than's been in the paper. My understanding is that money is fenced off, but we thought a lot of other money was fenced off too. So there's no question that it's more vulnerable than it would have been. But I think it's also, I don't know if people are betting on this and odds, but I think the odds are still not too bad.
That it will materialize.
Yeah. And, the Navy Naval Academy benefits from this. It connects to their resilience. And, maybe there's some connections there through the Navy that can help us move this thing forward. But I sure hope that, I not only hope that the FEMA grant for City Dock goes through, but that FEMA in general survives, because I can't imagine how we're going to deal with disasters without knowing that FEMA will back up our Office of Emergency Management.
Well, Anne Arundel County, with the 500 and some odd miles of coast, is that about right?
Yeah, 30.
I mean, is very prone to disasters. I mean, we've had, for crying out loud, we had a tornado a couple of years ago, but it doesn't take much of a storm to come up the bay to cause the flooding. And I mean, I'm not talking about the nuisance flooding, even the strange flooding down in Annapolis, which we've known about, but I mean, just the damage to the coastline, the erosion, and with everything. I mean, FEMA is critical for Maryland, just with all the coastline that we do have with the bay, and specifically Anne Arundel County with our rivers and tributaries and everything else that go in there.
I mean, the Resilience Authority, I will tell you, is really cool, and it was the way it came to be was great as well. And we're, the state bill that Senator Elfreth pushed, and we all pushed for, and then doing it together with the city of Annapolis, funding it through the county. They're right here in this building. It has just. It's been a magnet for grants, for money, and doing things off the book, saving the county a lot of money. And it was controversial on our county council. It was a 4-3 vote. There were 3 that didn't think we should create a resilience authority, fund a resilience authority, any of those things. They didn't believe we would actually save money this way. But it has made our projects fundable by a lot of other sources.
And those are a lot smaller projects than the city dock. I mean, the city dock is $100 million. I mean, we're talking.
Yeah, and you define resilience pretty broadly. So, we're talking to the Resilience Authority about doing the Edgewater Recreation Center, this building that has been dilapidated for many years, and just, managing that because Public Works has so much that they're doing right now because of the federal funding that came down, and we've got a lot of infrastructure that we're building in the county. So they've turned out to be a great partner.
Now, speaking of shared programs, right now there is a push in the city of Annapolis, potentially with a ballot referendum, depending on the signatures that are coming in, to look at merging some services with the county. And notably, they're looking at like police, fire, public works on that. I mean, I know that the county does handle elections for the city, and there's certainly, the health department is shared and everything else at this point. Any thoughts on that?
So it's funny that I often read about this in the paper, even though John Hammond was our budget officer, and I have a great relationship with him. He stuck around in the first months to help us get through that first budget, and I've read what he's written about it. It all makes sense. I think they had a student come in somebody come in and do some research, and it's amazing how infrequent it is that anybody talks to the county about it. I mean, the city has to decide what they want to merge first, and then we would have to decide. We would both have to decide. So we are open to that conversation always. And some conversations have actually happened in the last couple of months. There are candidates running for mayor who are talking about it and asking questions about it, and I'm sending them to the relevant people in county government so that they understand the issue.
See if it makes sense.
Yeah,
willing to talk. Good enough. All right, as we start to wrap up a little bit here, I want to talk a little bit about what I think is probably your crown jewel, Crownsville.
Crownsville. Hey, I hadn't even thought about that.
Hey, how about that fun? It's been a long time.
But it ain't about me, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been a long time coming from a notorious institution to a decrepit and abandoned property, pretty much. There was a vision for a bunch of soccer fields and a stadium and everything else at one point, and you've just recently released the final plan, all 111 pages of it. And, we could spend all day talking about this project. But for those that are unaware, can you give us like the Cliff Note version of that? Yeah. I mean, because it's just, and I don't say it lightly, but I think that is the crown jewel in your administration at this point.
Yeah, it's certainly something that I've felt really strongly about. I knew about Crownsville growing up as a kid. People who had been at Crownsville, it was a scary place, right? That was and if you were African American growing up in this county and certainly in Annapolis, everybody told you that if you did something bad, you go to Crownsville, right? Because in fact, people were put there not to address their mental health challenges, but to get them out off the streets. So it was almost like a prison in some ways. So yeah, it was vacant. The state closed it down and the state owned it. But my very first meeting with Governor Hogan, when I came in, my really only in-person meeting with the governor was when you first come in, I asked all the county executives how we could work together. And I said, Crownsville. There had been a big fight over this proposal to build not just a stadium, but a hotel and a bunch of
it was a whole
district. And and a lot of people had gone pretty far down that road. And I actually got contacted by the developers of that, with their request, hoping that I will have changed my mind from what I said in the campaign. They really wanted us to use our bonding authority to pay for all the improvements there for their business,
Right.
Which was sort of laughable. It meant that we couldn't build schools, we couldn't do other things. So that was a non-starter. But I strongly felt Chris Trumbauer on the council had led a task force that had looked at uses for Crownsville, that if the county were to acquire it and wanted to acquire it, the county executive said no. And I don't blame him, because when you ask people in central services in the county, they don't want to have to deal with this,
Sure.
crumbling infrastructure.
Christine Anderson in your podcast said that she didn't want
nuts.
What the hell's he thinking about?
Yeah. But everybody's on board now and is excited about it, because it's of all the things, because of the history of how people were treated there. And there was some good work that was done there as well. Definitely read Antonia Hilton's book, Madness. It tells the story like nobody's ever told it before. But if you look at that 500 acres, it is beautiful nature, beautiful trees, beautiful open space, beautiful buildings. And there are organizations that have remained there that treat addiction, substance use disorder, mental health,
right.
and our food bank. It's
right.
almost like that place has it has an aura about it, maybe a spirit, something like that is about healing. It's what it was supposed to be created for, but we can do so much better than it ever was. So turning it into Crownsville Hospital Memorial Park, the master plan has got a whole lot of aspects to it that were brought by community. We have had. We joked to the consultant who did the plan that think of the project you've done in the country that has had the most community engagement that you've ever done, and double that. And that's what we need here. And that's what they've done. So now we have to build it. It's going to be
details.
And it's going to be piece by piece. And so there's some skepticism about that. But, starting with a lot of the part, bit by bit, there's this is very doable, and it's doable partly because it attracts so much passion from across the globe. Really, people reading this book, all the members of Congress who've toured it, all of the members of the General Assembly who've toured, they want to be involved in creating a place for healing where the history of mental health is told, the history of Crownsville is told, because it's a national story, and turning it into a place where organizations can do their work on healing and, writ large, as well as people can come and experience history and nature and recreation. And
well, that's the core of it is going to be several nonprofits, like you say, the folks that are in recovery and healing and everything else. I know that you talk about the old place, but I know that Blue Ribbon Project is also up in there as well. Bet. And Taylor Piles always puts some videos up of little hauntings that he thinks goes around there.
Yeah, and that building where they are is we have just about completed the reconstruction of that, the rehab of that as the nonprofit center,
right? Which
is an institution to house and encourage and work with local nonprofit organizations that are becoming more and more important in delivering services.
And it's sort of an incubator for nonprofits, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
But there's going to be active recreation. There's going to be places for reverence.
Yep.
Janice Hayes Williams has done. I can't even come up with
Found
the word.
the names of the 1,700 people.
Well, I would say remarkable work, but remarkable is such an understatement as to what she's done. To recognize the horrors that had happened there, to recognize the people that had died there, to give them a name, say their name.
And the amazing thing is we also so her work has been mostly centered around the cemetery, and we have people in this county who actually worked there for their careers. They still are alive. And that's what the basis of the story that Antonia Hilton wrote. But they're also on our committees that are deciding what the future should look like. And people who have been patients there and people who have had family who was patients there. So it's important that we're doing this while those folks are still here to help. Yeah.
And I think it's a good healing process for any number of people.
For all of us
as well.
Yeah.
All right. As we start to wrap up, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, what do you wish more people knew, or more people in the county knew or understood about the county?
Okay, I'll tell you one. I wish more people understood that a third of our residents are the ALICE population, asset limited, income constrained, employed. That's what United Way calls folks who are basically living paycheck to paycheck and cannot afford to miss more than a couple paychecks. They're the people who can't afford the housing or are struggling to afford their housing in the county. They're the people who, are struggling to pay their bills. And when I first ran Poverty Amidst Plenty, written by our Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families folks with the Community Foundation of Anne Arundel County, comes out every 3 years, and I would wave that around to people. And
I would recommend everybody, you can get that, I think, at the Community Foundation website. And that's Dr. Pam Brown's report.
It's data, and it shows you by neighborhood and by category and what the challenges are. And folks, because people think, and the reason I want people to know that about this county is that we're thought of as a wealthy county, and we are on average, but it's a very difficult place to live if you're part of our essential workforce that our economy depends on. So for our businesses to thrive, they got to have folks who can get to work. We have to have good education, good public transportation even, or at least some public transportation, housing, childcare, those sorts of things. And what is great about this time is that because we have a workforce shortage, the business community, the chambers of commerce, folks that normally wouldn't be aligned with the Health and Human Services crowd are totally aligned, because that's what they're saying they need, is a healthy, productive workforce with a place to live. So if we want to be pro-business, we have to be pro-people and get that third of our population stabilized and function, contributing.
A great indicator of that third of that population is every Christmas morning, my family, we go and we serve breakfast at the lighthouse. It's just sort of a tradition. And I remember one Christmas, my daughter was probably a junior in high school. She's slinging the sausages or whatever the heck it was that was there. And she looks up, and there's a classmate on the other side of the line as a resident of the lighthouse. And there was this just very awkward look between the two of them.
Yeah.
And they both said the same thing. It's like, what the F are you doing here? They didn't say it, but that was what was. Yeah. And we had a great conversation afterwards when we got home, and said that, we're very fortunate that we're not on the other side of that line.
Yeah.
And that's why we do need to get back. That's why we do need to realize the community. And I think most people are, they are that one or two paychecks away. I mean, Salvation Army in their kitchen, I saw somebody roll up in a brand new Benz and grab some stuff. And I was talking to the commander there, and he said, I know anybody is welcome, but I do know the story. And it was a guy that lives in a fairly upscale neighborhood, lost his job. It was a stay-at-home mom type thing at the end of the month. It was like, okay, do we eat or do we not pay the mortgage?
Right.
And he says, I do know that he's going to get a job. He's going to be fine. And I do hope that he'll remember us in some way when he is. So it's all about give and take. And we do need to make sure that we're really on board and helping out our neighbors any way we can.
Good people fall through the cracks.
I'm not sure if you were a Boy Scout. I'm going to guess you probably were.
No, you know what? I was so into the horse thing. I was in a thing called Pony Club.
Pony Club, okay, yeah. And you had the little on the heart on the hat with the little shield. My sister was in the Pony Club.
Oh yeah,
U.S. Pony Club and everything.
Yeah, so that took up
probably a lifetime subscriber to the Chronicle of the Horse too, right?
Well, no, I'm not I don't know about a lifetime subscriber.
Do they still
I used to get it. Yeah, I think they do. Yeah.
But one of their unofficial mottos for the Boy Scouts is to leave it better than you found it. Does that apply to you when you leave the county?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
You're going to have a successor. You're going to walk out here on December 7th, 5th, something, whatever, 2026. Third?
I think the 3rd is the day of the inauguration. I looked it up.
But fast forward 4 or 8 years after you're out of office, what would you like to see the county look like?
I would like to see that we still have a lot of trees, and we still have, and that the bay is like starting to grow some grasses, because some of the work that we've done on erosion and on development and on protecting the land has worked. I would like to see that the For All has remained, not necessarily in the slogan,
right,
but that this was a place where, I talked to black police officers, so this was a place where folks sort of thought was racist if you weren't white. It had that reputation over the years, and I want it to be a place where people can live a good quality of life from all backgrounds. And and there's a place of real opportunity. I mean, it all sounds kind of kitschy and typical like political stuff, but it's
nothing
true.
None of us want. It's nothing that none of us
we all
don't
want the same thing. Exactly,
we really
the
do.
same thing. Yeah.
Well, okay. My last thing I want to touch base is, and if I never hear the word COVID again, it'll be too soon, and I'm sure that is with you. But and I don't want to discuss it, but I do want to say that personally, knowing now what we didn't know then, between you and Dr. Colin Narman, and really everybody in the county, every employee from the public works to the health department to just everything, with what we knew, did a fantastic job. You had fastballs thrown at you with lawsuits and this and that, and it sucked for businesses. It sucked for people.
It sucked.
Opening the parks and just everything was there, and and Monday morning quarterbacking. I mean, sure, at this point, if COVID rolls around next year, you've learned, and you know the missteps, and you know what was wrong. But from me to you, well done on that. And I mean, there'll be some people that be like, oh my God, you almost put us out of business, and okay, fine. But we didn't know. Mm-hmm. There was an awful lot that we didn't know, and you can't deny that we lost like 1,200 residents.
Yeah, I was going to say that, and we don't know who they are. I mean, imagine if we had known their names and their stories. But we don't, because they're protected by medical records, and that's a lot of deaths in that amount of time in one county.
Well, I do know one is, and you probably know him, Robert Eads, who passed away of COVID. And I mean, there's a guy that's got an absolutely incredible story. I love to consider him a friend.
Yeah.
He was an advocate for the kids. He was an advocate for public housing, and really making primarily Annapolis a place for all.
Yeah.
But I know I won't take up any more of your time. I know you're off to the library.
On COVID, for the people who really saw that as a violation of their rights and government overreach, we do have to remind them that when it started, there were images from New York City of where do we put all these bodies, and from Italy, and what we were planning for, we were looking for places we could rent where mass numbers of people could be put in beds and have nurses from somewhere trying to take care of the fact that they couldn't breathe, and we didn't have ways, the ventilators, and it was like seriously scary, and vaccination helped, but we saved a lot of lives. And when you look at the data between jurisdictions that, even in Maryland, jurisdictions that really took it seriously and the ones that didn't, the death rate was much higher in the ones that didn't. So we saved a lot of lives, period.
I don't want to take any more of your time. I do appreciate the hour that we've spent. I know that you're off to the library to talk about $115 million worth of something.
It's actually state money, part of the blueprint is for student mental health.
Student mental health, which is
something that we started in the beginning with, but
something that we can probably spend hours with. Right. I want to thank you so much for your time. Again, it sounds like you were in the Army, but thank you for your service. But I mean, nobody. I've always said that people, we can sit here and we can bitch about the politicians and say, okay, God, that's Steuart Pittman, man. he sucks. I can't believe he does. Buckley, oh my, what the?
Yeah.
Nobody gets into this job coming in saying, I need to get in there, get that 4th floor office, and really screw things up. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I mean, our ideals may differ on the best way to do it.
Right. Yeah.
But.
And it's very legitimate old Republican Democrat thing of the role of government, and the private sector and how you make it all work. And that's what we should be talking about.
County Executive Pittman,
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been a bonus podcast from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.